Okay. It's a mixture of genres that doesn't fit anywhere. I didn't imagine anyone thinking, oh, this fits right into our this, because the featured people are a heterosexual couple, but there's plenty of gay action going on. It's a crime. It's a crime thriller. It's also a comedy. It was so many conflicting things. I thought I really just need to do this myself, and I just grabbed the name Hosta. We had this beautiful garden my husband maintains out back, and he loves hosta plants, so I said, okay, that's it. I was focusing on the book so much, I said, I'm not going to focus on the name. And although hostas are quite spectacular, and they don't look like much during the winter, but they spring out beautifully and send up gorgeous flowers in the spring, so I guess I sort of hope Hosta Press will do that. Yeah, so that's why I did it. And then once it was founded, I thought, oh, you know, a whole new world opens up here. What else am I interested in doing? What would I like to put out? What would I like to see out there that's not out there? So suddenly from this one, you know, odd duck of a book that seemed to require its own publishing company, I sort of thought, what other odd ducks are there out there? This is another way to express my creativity, another way to pursue my curiosity.
Cool. I just wanted to know how to publish things. I'm a serial entrepreneur and also just someone who wants to know how to do everything. And so when I started this because I write, so I know what writing is like. I own a bookstore, so I kind of knew what both ends of the spectrum were like, but I didn't know the middle, and I really want to be an expert at everything. So I was like, I think I should publish books now. I just want to learn how to do it. And so I really didn't expect this to be anything. It was more just like, I want to learn how to do this. The 2 children's books I did were local folks that I knew. One guy that did the Stegosaurus book is a cartoonist, and he came to the game nights at the store, and he showed me his cartoons one day, and I was like, we should make a book. The other girl I went to high school with and friends with on Facebook, and she posted this ABC stuff. She's a graphic designer, and she did this ABC wall for her new baby. And I saw it on Facebook, and I was like, you should make a book from this. And then she was like, do you want to do it? So then it was just like, okay. So then I was like, well, I have 2 books now. And so it was really just more me wanting to learn the process. We did like a whole Kickstarter thing, so it was crowdfunding, it wasn't through Kickstarter, but I say that because that's what people know. But we did a whole crowdfunding thing, and really I thought I was just gonna like make these books and learn how to do it and give them to the people who bought them, and that would be it. But then people kept asking for them, and then it was like, oh, maybe this should be a thing now. And so now it's the thing. So I'm like, well, now I have to kind of really figure out how to do this. So really that was my journey as to like why I did it. It was just because I wanted to learn how to do it.
You could just come to a panel like this.
I could have, and I've been to a bunch, but doing is how I learn too. So like I had already learned from talking to people on panels and stuff like that. I sort of knew, which is how I could do it at all, because I had done some research. But I wanted to like really do it and really know like what are all the struggles of this, and there are struggles. But that's essentially it.
So Rebel Satori actually started off as a magical journal in 2001. And our contributors were developing both longer projects. So in 2007, we launched Rebel Satori Press and did our first book. And in 2008, our friends at Suspect Thoughts decided they were ceasing publishing. And I got a call that they had several books under contract that they felt obligated to do, and asked if I could do them. So we launched QueerMojo to take those on, and I also reached out to my friends who were then suddenly brought to the publisher to pick up their books. So QueerMojo suddenly became the larger project for a few years, and basically that brings us to today. We have authors that we continue to publish their books, and again, leading through a couple hundred submissions over every 6 months, a backlog, and always wanting people for months and months and months because one person doing everything.
Hi, I'm Louis Ceci with Beautiful Dreamer Press. Those of you who were at Saints and Sinners 2 years ago kind of heard the foundation story for Beautiful Dreamer Press. Basically, I started it because my partner, Don Flint, passed away before he could get his first book, chapbook, published. And I decided to take that on, and it's called Beautiful Dreamer because I was singing to him on the way to the hospital or the doctor or something like that. And he said, you have a beautiful voice. And the song I was singing to him at the time was Beautiful Dreamer. So that became Beautiful Dreamer Press. And one of his first publications was in Rebel Satroi. So I was trying to look through here to see if it's in this collection. So that was 2000, 2001, 2003. When he died, I had a computer with 300 more poems on it. So I put out 2 more books, and then I needed to make some money. So I went back to being a software engineer, and when I retired in 2015, I relaunched Beautiful Dreamer Press with a collection of photographs from my friend Tom Schmidt. He'd done photographs of go-go boys from San Francisco, and we farmed those out to various authors and said, take a look at this picture and see if you can write a story about it, or a poem. And Dave responded, and Louis responded, and several other people. And once we got enough, I thought, this would make a pretty good book. So we started out with that. And we've been going like that ever since. Here are all our books right here. So, yes, as a publisher, you know we are always promoting. So come buy our books. They're at Tubby and Coo's stand upstairs as well. And the other reason I started my press is because this happened to me. I got my own novel published, and it was such a thrill. I thought other people should have that thrill too, because there are really good books out there, and they just can't find a publisher. And then, just to be a little bit catty, as I was going through, I was going, oh no, that's not how you do it. No. No, that's not. So, once you're your own press, you can do it the way you want it done.
So, I wanted to talk a little about the logistics of, publishing the book, partly because I think a lot of people don't know, the whole process, how you really go from a manuscript to getting the book into the reader's hands. And so I thought we would talk a little bit about that. And maybe, Louis, you'd like to start because you said you had some financials you'd like to share with us. Very illuminating.
I think everyone on this panel would agree, if you want to make money, don't become a book publisher. There are 2 really quick, 3 maybe, really quick ways to lose money. Be a book publisher, open a restaurant, run a bookstore.
Or do multiple of those things.
But to just give you an idea, I'm going to do some very quick financials. You don't have to write this down, but it'll give you an idea. So we just did Felice Picano's book. We had a book launch here. We printed up 15 copies of this, brought them to New Orleans, and sold them at the book launch. The cost of producing this book, if you include the printing, the service charges, and of course the shipping to get it to where you need to sell it, these books cost us about $6.95 a piece. So we sell them for $19.95 a piece. That gives us a $13 profit, which the publisher splits in our contract 50-50 with the author. So we make $6.50, they make $6.50. That's if Beautiful Dreamer Press sells it. If a bookstore like Tubby and Coo's sells it, what's your split?
60-40. You get 60, I get 40.
So,
But in the room.
Yes. And so that reduces the profit to about half of that. We would get about $4.50, and you would get you would get $4.50, and we'd get $5.50. Sell it through Amazon, and it reduces even more, almost by half. We would make even less. And there's another way that things can get sold through Amazon. People can buy your book and then resell it. You do not make any money on that at all. However, every sale on Amazon counts toward your Amazon ranking. So there's a little something there. And then when you are contracted under Beautiful Dreamer Press, I will sell the author copies of the book at cost, which then they can sell, give away, use to make paper mache masks, whatever they want. But it's pretty even and steven. And my last little bit of information is about our best-selling book, Koala Sonia, by David Pratt.
An interesting connection in that we are both publishers now, but I was published by Hood.
We've sold almost 1,000 copies of, in all formats. That's paperback, ebook, and audiobook. We are about 180 copies from breaking even on that. So if you undertake to publish a book, realize that you're going to have to sell about 1,000 to 1,200 copies to break even. And it's a long process. It's been 2.5 years, 2 years?
To March 25th, 2017 was the
2 years. It's a long tail. So that's all I have.
And to get distributed well, you have to put it in returnable, which means then suddenly you get in brick and mortar bookstores. Like the small ones are good, I deal with them directly, but then like Barnes and Noble used to carry their books. They have a book event, order 100 copies, and return 99 of them.
Yes.
Which then I suddenly have 99 copies of the book, and charge a $2 copy service fee. So there goes any margin I ever might make in the book. So I took the only person who's going to take money, and it's not too much, is the author. They take royalties on these prices. You say they're going to take royalties.
Yeah, I think I have a really unique perspective because I own a bookstore. And so from the publishing side, it was really interesting for me to do this because, one, I got to see this kind of stuff where it's like, okay, the publishers, you don't make a lot of money per copy of the book. But also, like, I know as a bookstore, I have to have a certain amount in order for the bookstore to make money as well. And so it's an interesting perspective. So with my stuff, all of what you said tracks for me as well. Mine broke even, but it's because I did 3. So if you add everything up for all 3 books, it broke even. The ABC book kind of carried some of the other ones, so I've sold a bunch of this one and not as many of the other ones. And so if you kind of looked at all 3 of them together, which is what I did because I crowdfunded it all together as well, the whole project broke even. I also split 50-50 with the authors, and so for me, I think a lot of people don't realize that you get less money from Amazon because if you self-publish, you get more that way, right? But it's kind of not how it works from a distribution perspective. The more people you put in between, the less money you make, which makes sense. And so if you are selling directly to a distributor, for example, if you publish through Lightning Source or Ingram Spark, you're automatically in Ingram system, which is great for bookstores. That's how I order books. And so you're automatically making a little bit less because you have to set it at a discount. But in order for the bookstore to get a 40% discount, which is the lowest discount I'm typically willing to take, because that's my margin, right? Like publishers set the prices. So whatever discount I get is my margin. So 40% is about the lowest that I'm willing to take unless it's for a specific reason. I do take books for this at a little bit less than 40, for example, but most of the time 40 is the lowest I'm willing to go. So if I don't see that 40 in Ingram, I'm probably not going to order it. So I knew that. But then I also found out that from a publisher perspective, in order for the bookstore to get a 40% discount, I have to offer it at like 54, 55%, which means I'm making less than 50% as a publisher because I have to offer it at that high to the distributor so that the bookstore gets it. So that it's kind of this chain of things that most people don't really think about. Whereas it works for me that I own a bookstore because then I don't need the distributor. I just like order them directly and sell them directly, and then I'm getting them printed for $6, $7, $8 depending on what it is, and then I can sell it for $15 or $20, and I'm making a bigger margin. But that's only because I own a bookstore and I can just print them and sell them. Most people can't do that, right? So yeah, it's an interesting thing where most people don't think about all the things in between and like how bookstores work and how much you have to kind of give up as a publisher in order to get the books even out there at all.
When I approached, feeling the manuscript was nearly done, I thought that distribution was going to be the most difficult part, because going through Wallasonia, I had heard tales of the Ingram site and the Ingram people and all that from Lou, and I knew that, if Ingram doesn't like your margins, they'll reject it. If they don't like the colors, they'll reject, all of this. So I was prepared for distribution to be this kind of horror show. And while they did send this back a couple of times, only one was the thing that we absolutely had to correct. And then presto, it was available all over the world. What I had not counted on so much was the creation of the files. And I'm not ever going to do this again, but this time because I was the author and I was worrying over the content and the final fixes. I threw money at the problem of having it typeset. And I've been told by typesetters, oh no, leave it to the professionals, it's extremely difficult, it's extremely arcane, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. $3 a page to have a book typeset. I ain't doing it again. As many of you know who worked with me, I have a young friend who totally covers the waterfront on anything electronic, media design, all of that. I'm sitting him down in front of InDesign, and he's going to do it next time. We'll do it together. And it turned out very well. But it's also, first of all, it's another personality to deal with. The typesetter disappeared for 3 weeks over Christmas. He vanished for 3 weeks over the Christmas holidays. And my cover designer, fortunately, the actual elements were done by one person, and then putting it into the shape that was needed for Ingram was done. That little finishing bit was done by someone else. She was a great cheerleader, and she helped me deal with everyone. The person who did the ebook was wonderful, and it was so inexpensive that I might pay someone to do an ebook conversion again. Because that's awfully for $100. I just said, here, deal with it. Boom, boom, done. But the typesetting, be your own typesetter. I would say absolutely. And there are lots of little things in typesetting that you don't think of. This is what publishers, small press publishers discuss. Lou and I had a whole conversation last night about widows and orphans. You cannot get rid of all of them, even if you're a professional typesetter. So be forgiving when you see widows and orphans in a book.
I don't have any widows or orphans. That was my biggest accomplishment. I was like, this book has no widows or orphans in it. Because it's almost impossible.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Right? My typesetter said at the end, she said, I know there are those 3 to 1. I've tried everything you can get rid of.
And we give them an author, can we get rid of this one sentence that's on page 3 or 4?
Yeah. Yes.
I've had an author who objected to certain hyphenations.
Is that me?
No.
I forget what I objected to and what I didn't.
Yeah, I think too with all that, that's one thing as far as logistics. I know we talk about some of the financials, but as far as logistics that a lot of people don't think about is just to find a font for this book took me a good 50 hours. I'm not even joking. To try and find the right font. One for the cover. I didn't design the cover, someone else did, but font, you still have to find a font for the cover and for the back cover copy. And how's this gonna match and what is this gonna look like? And one thing I did not think about was oh, this is gonna take me a really long time because I have to look at thousands of fonts to find the right one.
Yes, is this wide the Y that I want?
Right,
Exactly.
Exactly, and it's oh man, and if you want it to be bigger, on the back of this book, this Y is bigger than the rest, right? Because we wanted, this is a Captain Hook book, so we wanted it to look piratey, and then it's okay, so, but how is the rest of it gonna look? So this is actually a different font from the rest of the, so you don't even, it's I didn't even think about fonts and trying to get everything into the right format, the actual file, because it's not oh, you just write it and save it as a PDF and upload it. It is not that easy at all. And so that was the most work, I guess, the most frustrating part was actually trying to I love editing, so it's yay, editing, making a story, and then it was oh crap, now we have to do all the not fun stuff of the actual logistics of putting it together, making it to where, because sometimes with widows and orphans, you're trying to get rid of stuff, but then it makes like one word on a page, and then you're like, no, you can't have just one word on a page, so now I have to go back. And so, but now I learned all of that, which is what I wanted to do. So, it's like book design, I got you. And so it's that kind of stuff where I didn't think that it would take 50 hours just to find the right font, and it was very frustrating.
It took Lou and me about, I don't know, several days.
Yeah.
The font that we picked for the title of Wallasonia, there's a cedilla in the title, and their cedilla, the cedilla for that font looked...
It was ugly.
It looked terrible.
An
It
ugly
didn't look like a
cedilla.
cedilla, so we had to have, did Anne McMahon create the cedilla?
I think she did.
That's an independently created cedilla that would look different in the real font.
Custom Cedilla.
It's a custom cedilla.
I'm a Virgo. I love choosing fonts. Ooh,
Yeah.
dissenters.
That was the great thing about working with Louis. We would like get obsessive about the exact same things, the exact same way. And deciding on my own what to be obsessive about or not, that was interesting because I could say to the typesetter or to the cover designer, what do you think? Well, ask them about their own work. They may either be super critical or they may be very accepting of it because it's what they chose. They're not being defensive. It's just they don't think of anything else. And I read all about readability of fonts and what fonts convey what. Like you want to convey literary Baskerville. We got Baskerville on the binding because we had to make a last-minute decision. Here's a typical Ingram problem. This, with all of its kind of splattery, cobwebby, does not fit on here. Because if you put it on here, it will come too close to the fold. If you shrink it down so it doesn't come too close to the fold, you can't read it. So we had to use a regular font. We used Baskerville. The inside of the book is all Georgia. But it has to do with the serif. We say Baskerville for literary, Airport Romance is a different font. Nonfiction is yet another one. And you may disagree with all of some of these. Like the number of words to a line, like the number of words that a human eye takes in at once is an issue.
Yeah. And point size is not the true indicator of how many words to a line.
Right. Yeah, there's the kerning and the leading.
And the readability for the reader.
Right.
We have house standards that makes fonts like easier because we only have a few fonts to choose from, even so it will look consistent. But I had a poet who was reading from his book and said this is really hard to read from. And it was Garamond, which has a very thin. So when you're reading in a bookstore with not the best lighting, it's very hard to distinguish that reading distance that a poet reading in public would read from. So that made a shift in our poetry font to something different.
And Kindle is a whole separate deal because the answer to almost any Kindle question is, well, it's not going to look that way anyway. Widows and orphans forget it. It depends upon who's on the device. So with Kindle, it's actually good you can let everything go because it's going to look so different.
We had a custom font for Wallasonia that wasn't available on Kindle, so we had to go with a different font. Talking about publishing poetry, this is our fourth book, which is by M.J. Arcangelini, a Northern California poet, really good. But he writes on 8.5 and 11 paper, and that's not what this is. So we had to go over almost every poem. How do you want it placed on this page? Because it's a visually different effect from an 8.5 by 11 page. So something to consider.
Yeah, and I think another thing that people don't think about is like this line spacing. Because when you're just writing, it's like, oh, single space, double space, 1.5, whatever. But when you're actually making it into a book, and it also depends on the trim size of the book and everything, it's different. So like this is like 1.125, it's like some weird thing. And so that was another thing that I didn't think about. It's like, oh, I could just like put this in Word and make it like 1.2 or whatever. No, that's not at all how it works.
And also Word, since mostly authors in the room, things that authors do to make things, they think easier. And things Word does automatically, especially with poetry, where you put tabs in. Well, the first thing you have to do is strip all the tabs out, and then sometimes they're tabs, and sometimes Word has decided, oh, you want a space at the beginning of every paragraph, so it does it automatically. And with poetry, you'll have one tab and then 3 lines of the same indent, but they're not tabs. So I literally, laying out poetry, have to have the original manuscript and InDesign on 2 different computers, comparing line by line if it's a first poet who tends to move text across the page.
Yeah. And children's books are a whole nother world. Doesn't look like anyone else here has children's books, but like it's a whole other thing because you're laying out. And sometimes, I guess maybe in some books you do this, but when you're laying out spreads across 2 pages, it's a lot different because then you have the bleed and like how much in the middle it has to be, the gutter and all of that you have to deal with, which I didn't really have to deal with this book, but did with the children's books. Luckily, for both of my children's books, this person's a graphic designer, so literally she's just like here, and that was it. I didn't have to do anything, which was great. The other one, he's a cartoonist, but all I really had to do was lay it out. So they already had their own fonts and, they kind of did a lot of the stuff on their own. But usually, especially if you have a separate author and illustrator, then you're having to figure out, okay, where do we put the words on this page for the children's book versus the photos? And then you really have to work with the illustrator to say, okay, like the words have to be here, so you have to kind of draw the picture around it, and it's a whole other world. So if anyone's interested in children's publishing, talk to me later because it's a lot different from publishing novels.
And then there's the audiobook.
Oh, yes.
Which in a desperate and futile attempt to save money, I record my own. I don't know what a narrator would cost, but the automatic answer is too much. And ACX, which has some satanic agreement with Amazon, it's Audible. They, unlike Ingram Spark, you call them Ingram Spark, they are super nice, super polite, and super helpful. No matter how tangled that website may seem, or the process may seem, boy, they are, you feel good after you talk to Ingram Spark person every time. Audible is a whole other thing. They're like, basically the attitude is, yeah, who else are you going to publish it with? And they send back feedback that you have to decipher. They will say, you've done X, our guidelines say you must do Y, but it doesn't say in what way you have done X. How have you failed to da-da-da-da-da? And how does this guideline they've given you apply? So you call them up, and they're a little less nice, and they don't give you all the feedback at once. Some guy will notice 5 things. You'll fix the 5, and then a 6th and 7th will be noticed by the next person who reviews it. We thought we had our front matter all taken care of, and we're just dealing with the back matter over and over and over. And then finally, a front matter issue turns up 3 times. I mean, how we're going to get this book out? Although while sounding, I went through like 6. Yeah.
Room space, there has to be room space, whatever that term is, a little silence just before you begin a chapter.
And I had too many tongue clicks.
Oh.
Even though we had the screen over it, there were too many tongue clicks, so the guy had to go through it like.
Just a quick tip if you're going to do your own audiobooks, what I found has been really helpful for me is podcasting, because I have 2 podcasts and I do a radio show and I read out loud for the radio, and those things have really helped because you kind of learn those things that like make like what is expected, I guess. So I don't know, I'm just saying, like if you kind of want to do your own audiobooks and learn what some of that stuff is, podcasting is cool because you kind of learn the audio levels and all that kind of stuff, which you may or may not know. So there's a lot that goes into it as far as the production of it that I think, and podcasting is easy to do on your own. That's not what this is about, but just quick tips that it's like reading things for, like I volunteer at the Radio for the Blind and read things, and you kind of learn things that way as well. So anyway, just quick tips for learning how to read audiobooks.
We haven't said much about ebooks yet. And you do get bigger profit margin on ebooks because there's no printing charge. That's very handy. I do my own ebook conversion, partly because I'm a geek. If you read my biography, I'm a software engineer. And I can read HTML and I can doctor it. What did you do for your?
I got someone to do it. Yeah, someone in McMahon recommended. Yeah, it was quite inexpensive. Unfortunately, this is one of those geeky things that can happen. The typesetter, when the typesetter has a finished product, PDF, you have to convert it back into Word and strip out everything, pretty near everything. And that's what the ebook maker uses. The typesetter added a space after every single end dash, so that line breaks would be okay. Well, what about all the end dashes that don't occur at line breaks? You know, it looked ridiculous, especially with all my chapter headings. I've got, where's the chapter heading? I've got end dashes in them. And I just, she said, I said, what is this? And she told me why. And I had to spend half again as much to go through, take out all those spaces, give it back to the ebook manufacturer, said, I sympathize, she's done this before. I only charged them $50 in addition to the $100 for doing it. Put it back in. I went through the entire new ebook. There was not a single problem with a single end dash. So I don't know where that idea came from. But, yeah.
You get really good at find and replace.
You get really good at finding and replace. And you have to remember to find and replace all forms of something.
Find the list, and then in InDesign you can set some program things. So I just have mine replace italics with italic style. That's not that I never use style in Word, because that would kill you both.
Yeah, and something with find and replace, that quick tip again, is if you are using Word, find and replace, which most writers do, put a space before whatever it is. Because if not, if you're trying to find and replace, for example, in or something, and it's like in a bunch of words, then you'll find and replace, and then you'll end up with like, some weird name inside of something, another word. But if you put a space before it, it'll avoid that problem. That is something I learned the hard way.
Also remember, if you're changing the word knife to dagger, the word knives has to be changed to daggers. I did that on this one at some stage. I changed something, but another form of it stayed in, basically possessive or something like that.
Also, you have to learn to be a little bit forgiving. This went through many, many publications, well, not many, many publications yet, many, many editions, back and forth between me and Felice. We get here in the town with our 15 copies ready to sell, and we find a typo on the back cover. Now, it's not a noticeable typo. It's 1966, it should be 1996. Not many people are gonna catch that one. But to fix that, I would have to rehire the graphic designer to relay out that piece of text. That's $25. I'd have to re-upload the files to Abrams Park. That's another $25. How many books do I have to sell to make up that $50? Anywhere between 100 and 200. So it's going to stay there for a while.
That's what the planning source would try before you put that change.
Yeah.
That's it.
I had to make a decision about something with this that would cause a re-upload, and I thought, my inspiration here is the stuff that was cranked out for, selling on the street in the early 19th century in England. They probably had mistakes too. It sort of adds to the charm, I think, because I'm not paying, First I'd find the typesetter would be the first thing. And then, because if you have a professional typesetter, they retain the file. You would have to pay them for that file, even though it's your book. So I'm not doing that. And I'm not going to get it changed and then the re-upload.
Plenty of authors they deal with frequently who know that it's in demand and they know you can make a change, so they think they can continue editing and send
that to You had some deal where you had free uploads.
Yes, every once in a while Ingram will offer free upload, and we took advantage of that.
What does that mean?
These are all electronic files. They have to be uploaded to the print-on-demand service. Usually they will charge you for each upload. But David had some really wonderful changes and edits, which almost amounted to a second edition or a revised edition.
Yeah.
And I was all prepared to say no. And then this wonderful offer came by, free upload till the end of June if you use this special passcode.
Maybe just to imagine what I would have done if he had said no. I probably would have paid for it because I found myself, because I found enough that, I'm having the wrong book, found enough that it really made a difference.
I have an offer to pay for it. Then I feel guilty paying for myself.
Can we talk about, is it okay for me to change the subject? Can we talk about metadata? Because I feel like metadata is something that a lot of people don't think about either, but
I don't even know what it is.
okay, so the metadata for your book is things like that you have to type in when you go to upload it, right? And you have to tell, whatever digital thing that you're going to upload. It's categorizations, so
And
you
they're
tell it,
awful.
they're awful. And you tell it, is this sci-fi, fantasy, whatever genre it is, but you have to go by codes. And they might be awful, but that's what bookstores and Amazon use to categorize your books and where to shelve your books. So it's really important that you pick the correct codes for your books. You can only put in, I think, 3 codes max.
Depending on the
So,
service.
correct, depending on what you use.
And Amazon still has their own categorization.
Correct.
Because I have authors that complain, well, I'm not trending in this, I'm not ranked in this,
Yeah, it's like, because I can only pick a certain number of things.
you need to fix it.
And, yeah. So just be aware that like with the codes, that's a whole separate thing. You can only pick a certain number of things, but metadata is everything. The page numbers for your book. I'll just, when you look up a book on Amazon and you kind of scroll down and it says like ISBN, page numbers, codes, that's essentially the metadata for the book. And so that's something to think about because that really matters. Also, the description of the book that you see on Amazon is part of the metadata, which is essentially like the back cover copy. So there's just a lot of things that go into just creating the metadata and making sure that you have the correct stuff. Because if you don't, it'll show up in the wrong place, and then authors will be like, I don't understand. So I'll give you an example. This book is a fantasy. It's Captain Hook's origin story. It's YA. And so, I just tell people it's a YA fantasy Captain Hook's origin story, and that seems really simple. But it is not, because I had to figure out, okay, so do I put this, because one thing that they will not let you do, you can't put something under both YA and regular fantasy. Because if it's YA, it's not for adults. Because you have to put the age range in there. And so it's like, well, this is appropriate for which age range. And if you put, 14 to 17 or 18, it won't allow you to also categorize it as adult. I had the same problem with the dinosaur book because it's a crossover like gift book for adults, but also it's a children's book. But you can't say it's a children's book and essentially a graphic novel. And so you kind of have to, for things that fall into multiple categories, like I'm sure your book is like a bunch of different things, you have to figure out like, where do I put this to where it's gonna get the most, seen? Because, it's like, okay, well, I don't want to push this as one thing. It's a lot of things. That's why I published it, is that it's not just one thing. And so just metadata is an interesting part of publishing.
I changed my words and categories quite a bit at the beginning. And actually, the system is very responsive. You tell Ingram a new set of words, they'll pop up in Amazon in some corresponding way very quickly. Michelle Carlsberg once recommended keep your ear to the ground what's happening in the news. And you may want to change your categories, metadata, and so forth based on what you're appealing to. I can't quite imagine a situation where you can actually change the change the keywords one day and 3 or 4 days later that would mean more people were buying it. But it's an interesting thought. It's particularly striking if in the news, or a film comes out, or a stage show that somehow relates. I'm trying to get Playbill.com interested just because theater fans know the Sweeney Todd story. So far, they're not.
I made an interesting mistake with Paulsonia. I categorized it under, I think it was marriage and family counseling or something like that. Because
Something was trending.
That family does need counseling.
yeah, it does, they do, and they do a fairly good job of it by the end of the book. And we only got like 2 returns. It's like, this was not, what I expected. And we trended fairly nicely in that category for another 2. And a brief rant, why is it that if your book has a gay character, it's LGBTQ? This is a fantasy book, this is a historical novel, this is a Western, but all of that gets crammed into the one category.
Does anyone do the Library of Congress cataloging and publication
Yes,
data?
yeah.
And sometimes those categorizations can be way off. Sometimes, usually they're limited categories. And how many people do the 2 deposit copies? My friends at Valancourt Books just got Library of Congress threatened to, they've never done it, and they have like 100 books. And they're all 19th century, it's just the last couple of weeks, and they're requiring 2 copies plus a $500 fine. This is, 2 young guys who print 19th century, early 20th century.
Say that again, the Library of Congress.
So there's 2 things, Library of Congress publication data, which is what libraries use to help shelve it. Then there's the deposit, so there's arcane rules apply to publishing, which not everyone knew about. So you're required to send 2 copies of every copyrighted publication to the Library of Congress at your expense. So Valancourt Books.
So why are they being fined?
Because they've never done it.
They've never
They have
done it.
100 books.
Well,
And you need to register your copyright too, but the registration office will take a PDF.
Can I say that?
I think some people in the audience may have questions, so,
For those of you who do specifically ebooks, are you familiar with Smashwords?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
our primary distribution.
Okay, yeah, because they have the most stringent rules about how to get an ebook online, and I think.
And they changed them. Like
Yes,
suddenly,
it's a
almost all
game.
my covers are the wrong size.
Yeah.
So they've been up there for years.
So it's always a game with me. If I can get it through Smashwords, it'll go anywhere.
Yeah, I start there and then they do the
Oh,
Kindle
okay.
from this one.
And then for audiobooks, Find Away Voices. Have you heard of that one? Something to check out if you do audiobooks. Find Away Voices is almost like Smashwords. They distribute through iTunes and all of the other things that are on Amazon. And I've had a really good relationship with them so far.
Cheryl?
What have you come up with in terms of your standard agreement with writers? Did you find a template or make it up?
I started with the contract I got for this and then modified it so the proportions of how much the author got as opposed to the publisher. And I recently changed that so that I get more if Beautiful Fever Press publishes it, we get more than if
But beyond your writer fees, what about translation, book rights, movie rights, international rights, that kind of thing?
the contracts I offer cover everything.
So our original contracts years and years ago had all of those, but now I only take the rights that I think I'm going to capitalize on. So if someone has a connection, playwriting, and they think they're going to do a play or a radio show, we'll talk about that up front, and I figure that in most of the book, I don't take those rights, I just take electronic rights, and they don't try to do something that makes for ebooks. And they have modified over time contracts the way I do my day job too, so it's easy. We used to offer advances in the beginning, and one of my authors pulled me aside, Trevor Healy, and said, "You're not a bank," which was not a bank. Stop doing this. You're all in it together. So.
I just don't have the money to do advances. Yeah, right? So my contracts are different going forward, but for these, we did crowdfunding in order to be able to publish them. And so the deal that I made with these authors was that the crowdfunding, however much money we make, will go towards publishing these books. So no one, not even me, got anything off of the money we crowdfunded. That was literally what we used to publish the books. And then everything after that, everybody made money off of, and we split it 50-50. I got examples of author contracts from different various places. I was just like, are you willing to share with me what you do? And some places said yes. And so I was like, okay, cool. And then I sort of modified it to what we do. And the point of, like, for me, and this may or may not change going forward now that, like, it's a thing, but I just wanted to learn how to do it. And, you know, mainly I just wanted to help. I want to help people get their stories out there. And so I'm not, like, looking to get rich off of it. So essentially, I said, look, like, my authors keep all the rights to their own work. I take 1 year of, like, publication rights for this, and we can renew it every year. But also I tell them, like, if the book blows up and some giant publisher wants to do it and give you a 6-figure advance or whatever, like, I'm not going to tell you no for that. So, you know, we do a year at a time, but I'm pretty flexible as far as that goes because I'm just trying to help them, which is a bad place to be with business. And so my contracts will probably change at least a little bit going forward now that I have, like, a real separate publishing company. But for this round, I will still do crowdfunding. So it'll be, we're going to crowdfund, all that money is going to go towards publishing, and then from then on, anything we make will split.
So does everyone split 50-50? We've done both, but primarily we do fixed commissions. 50-50 on electronic.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, everyone else seems to do 50-50 splits. We do fixed commission, so either 10% and then 50-50 on ebooks. I've done some 50-50s, and I think they work out to be about the same. Maybe actually the fixed commission sometimes is a little bit more because it depends on how much costs and how many books you sell.
Yeah. I didn't like the fixed thing, just because from my perspective, if I'm selling it directly through the bookstore, if I get it printed and just sell it at the store, we all make the most money. If I sell it through Amazon, it's the least amount of money, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in between. So what I get and what the author get varies depending on how we sell it. If I sell something wholesale, we all get less. Whereas with a fixed price, you know, the author gets the same amount no matter what.
We have 2 tiers.
Okay. So
Retail and anything sold below 50%.
Okay.
Which Amazon takes 55% cut.
So that makes more sense, yeah. Because for me, I'm like, that's why I just say 50-50 on whatever it is. Like whatever the profit. It's 50-50 profit, not 50-50 of retail.
That's probably smarter. I think there are some books which, if I actually did the math, the author makes money and I lose money when we sell it through Amazon.
Right.
You also talked a little bit about how you started with this, why you started doing it. Can you say anything about your vision for your strategy, where it's going, what you want to speak, want to get?
Why we continue for almost 20
Why you
years.
keep doing this thankless task?
I mean, I feel like I just was talking. Okay. So for me,
No one wants to think about it.
this is, well, it's sort of an easier question for me because it wasn't a thing, now it's a thing. So, so now I have a separate LLC. So now my publishing company is going to be separate from the bookstore. My vision for, I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I always have big dreams for things. So we'll see what happens. But the idea is that I do want to keep publishing books. It's going to be, genre. My expertise as far as personally and with the bookstore is a niche store, so it's all sci-fi fantasy stuff. So that's what I also want to publish, so anything in the sci-fi fantasy speculative realm I will work on, and then also children's books, we'll see. But yeah, if I find a really good one, I may, or local, I'll probably focus on more local children's stuff, but then with the speculative stuff, stuff, just whatever likes my fancy. And so that's like going forward, but I also plan to have 3 imprints for the new publishing company. So one will be the main imprint, which is what this is. One will be called, so the new company is called Tales Press. And then we'll have Tales of the People, which is working with nonprofits and community organizations and schools and things like that. We have a lot of that around here, of like activist organizations and stuff that want to publish things. So I want to help those people out. And then Autonomous Press, which will be a self-published sort of arm where I will help other people publish their own books and print them and all of that for a cost that is yet to be determined. So that's my like sort of dream and goal, is to have these 3 imprints and to kind of just keep it going, mainly using crowdfunding as far as like bringing money in, of course, the sales from the books, and then crowdfunding.
I'm going to actually answer a slight variation on that question because I'm brand new and I have all sorts of ideas, not just LGBTQ, but beyond that, different kinds of formats, and so I'm really playing with this. But one thing that is very important to know about us guys is we need to see things that are pretty much finished. The editor needs to have seen it, a proofreader needs to have seen it. We don't have the resources to be going through, okay, the wedding should not be in chapter 3, the wedding should be in chapter 5, and therefore this can be, that all has to be done. If bridal is spelled B-R-I-D-L-E, we can do that. We won't be thrilled about it, but definitely, there are some editing and proofreading functions that we are able to perform, but we really can't. I think there are some cases where I think it happens, especially if you've worked with someone on a book for a long time, you've known them a long time, you feel there's an enormous amount of potential, but some major thing just isn't working. But in general, it helps something where you've done everything you need to do before it gets to us.
I agree. I've hired Jerry Wheeler. Because we don't have the resources for that, or the time to do it ourselves, or that may not be our expertise, it's certainly not mine.
And the editor and the proofreader are 2 separate things. The person who helps you think conceptually, and the person who cleans up all the.
For me, the editing is my favorite part, the content editing. So we completely rewrote this book almost from scratch. But that's what I really like to do. That's like what I would be doing if I wasn't publishing or owned a bookstore. I think I would just be editing. It's my favorite. But I did have a separate copy editor and stuff, and I don't want to do that every time. This was just like, yay, I have a book, I can edit it. No, I'm not going to do that every single time. It was sort of a special case, so I agree with that. But also, it's my favorite thing to do.
And I'll be in the business as long as I can continue to publish books like this, which are smart, funny, and the language sings. I just love this stuff.
I mean, that's, as long as the authors in our house continue to write, the reason we'll continue. Many times thought it was solid, because it is, we're going on 20 years. So it has ups and downs of enthusiasm, and the original journal sort of attenuated because the press has taken up most of the time. I think the hardest part is actually turning down manuscripts. So we use Submittable now, which is as a lifesaver. It's an online submission portal, which is a great back end. But I probably have 100 manuscripts sitting there right now that I have to go through the presses. And that's on 2 calls.
And I've had to actually suspend submissions for a year while I can get my own stuff.
Yeah, I mean, my own writing is, forget about it. Thankfully, I do photography, otherwise I'd be.
I also joke that this is my, I have a bookstore here in New Orleans, and I'm like, when New Orleans ends up underwater, the publishing is my backup plan, because I can do it from anywhere.
I just want to comment on what you said about Davidson about, having the manuscript in pretty much really good condition. I think that's true everywhere now, not just for, smaller presses like this, but like these people have, but even with the larger houses, if you're going to submit something, they want it to be pretty clean. They don't do editors don't now do the thing that they used to do where they took a young author and like sat with them and, really worked through. My understanding is they pretty want it to be in Davisson, did you know what?
Well, I just wanted to, you were kind of covering it, but I think you could address some of the things of what an author can do for his or her book that a publisher not afford to do. For example, if an author wants a specific artwork on the cover, the publisher can't necessarily afford to pay for that artwork, but the author just, his vision is to see this art on its cover. I mean, that would be an obligation of the author to try and get the rights and pay for that kind of fee, because most of it would be prohibitive for a small press to use their property for cover. So.
I know I'm a bit different from everyone else, but I tell people, for me, since we do crowdfunding, when authors submit things, I ask that they just submit everything they want to do, because then we crowdfund for it. So if there is specific artwork, like to do the research and to include that in the proposal that is sent to me, like, yes, I want you to publish this book, here's the things that I want, the more organized you are, the more likely it is I'm going to work with you. And then, and then that way I can say, okay, well then here's how much money we need, and then if we don't get it, we don't get it, and you don't get that, or you pay for it yourself. But, for me, since we do crowdfunding, it's a little bit easier. I just say, include everything you want to do, and we'll see if we can raise the money for it. For other people who don't do the crowdfunding, I'm sure it's a little bit different.
I have with Wallisoni, I have a picture that a friend of Lou's took. It's interesting, the book takes place on Cape Cod, and Lou's friend was based in the Bay Area. And so I sent him an email saying, what would work geographically? I said, you can't have cliffs, you can't have this, that, the other thing. And he actually, that would look like East Coast. I wanted a professional cover designer, which this man was not, to look at it. And Anne McMahon from Bywater Books, she did one major thing. She moved the kid off center. And I was like, whoa, glad I did that. It just totally changed.
She did something else. This shot has a seagull flying through the sky. She removed that. Yeah. If you look up the original.
Just the little things. And it was interesting that that photo session consisted of, he's like 100 shots. That was the one that worked. I was getting near the end, I was thinking, oh no. And then there was no second choice. That was the one somehow.
So I'm with Bywater Books, so I get the benefit of Anne McMahon doing all my covers.
Oh, man.
But what Bywater doesn't do, and I'm wondering if any of you do, is any kind of promotion publicity, or is that all the author-driven work?
Pretty much all the.
I didn't quite catch the question.
Publicity, do you
Oh,
like
publicity.
publicity, or is it the author's responsibility?
I do rely on the author a lot. I do some electronic publicity, Latin Literary Review, I do banner ads there. I've done ads in Gay and Lesbian Review, which are very expensive, but you do get a lot of exposure.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in a unique position for that, which is one of the reasons, something that helps me promote this for authors to work with me, is that I'm in a unique position in that if I publish your book, it's automatically in at least one bookstore. So that's always good, and I know how to sell my own books. So the most of course of what I sell is in the bookstore, but also that's one of the things that I know that for authors it's hard. A lot of that does fall on the author pretty much all the time, and marketing is something that I'm really good at. So that's something that I sort of promote as like I do market the books and have gotten them in a lot of local stores. I'm now that it's a thing, I'm trying to like do more outside of New Orleans. But I am really big on social media. Some of you may or may not follow me, but I do a lot of promotions on social media. I use the bookstore for a lot of things because the bookstore has a bigger audience. And so I do probably a little bit more than what some other publishers may do, although I do still rely on the authors clearly to do things like this author is in New York, I'm not in New York. So, you know, things like that where I do still rely a lot on the authors to like promote through their own channels because it just gets it out there even more than what I can just do on my own. But I try and do as much as I can as well.
I think that's also the advantage of press versus self-publishing.
Yeah.
If you're an established press that's been around for a while, bookstores and other outlets know you, they're more likely to pay attention to something that's put out. So, you know, there are bookstores that follow my social media where they may not follow a single author's social media.
Right.
So, and they know that you're curating books and your interest in the bookstore's interest match up. And also supporting authors' events. I have a lot of poets, so Emmanuel Xavier is very good at doing events, and I make sure that wherever he's doing it, he has books, and it's promoted, and joint promoted, and everything ahead of time.
Yeah, I guess that's the other thing, is because I'm a bookseller, I go to a lot of bookseller conferences, and so then I can tell all the booksellers, look at these books. So I have kind of direct access to places that some publishers may not, especially small publishers. And so that's what I think is good too, because also because the bookstore, this is through the bookstore's brand, if people know and like the bookstore, then they'll be like, oh, I like your bookstore, and so cool, like you're probably not gonna publish a book that you wouldn't wanna sell, right? So that gives me a little bit of an advantage versus being like completely unknown, the fact that I already had the bookstore.
Do any of you do ALA or the book fairs in Europe or anything like that?
I do Comic-Con.
I do reader conferences, a lot of my authors were there, the literary exhibition, no costumes.
So for those of you who don't have much of a marketing function within your press, what are the most effective things that you want your authors to do?
Readings and signings.
Personal experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know that from the other side of it. Yeah, and with the number of gay bookstores declining, you've got to find, where's the library where there's, one queer person on the staff who makes sure that there's a gay reading every month. Who are the gay-friendly people at regular bookstores?
Cafes.
Yeah.
And also the Rainbow Roundtable, the American Library Association, the
Yes.
LGBT Roundtable. They've been very good at helping us promote some of books and getting into their suggested reading list over their top books or whatever for the year. I found awards.
Does the author help with that, or is it?
I found literary awards to be the worst.
Yeah, lots of.
Land and I do not have a good relationship, and it's never going to change.
And every time the list comes out, you go, they did what?